Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being patient. 888-659-3727. Great to be here live on a Tuesday night doing the Bald Show. This, of course, is the Bald Truth. Phone number 888-659-3727. Listen, I try to be transparent with you guys when I do this program. And if you had any idea how frustrating it is to get this live program on the air sometimes, it's unbelievable. Drives me out of my mind. But we do it. We do the best. We do the best that we can. I have no transmitter. I have no people working for me in this studio. Everything is done by me. Thank God for Andrew Zarian. Thank God that he is home most of the time, and he's able to help me out when things go awry with our software and everything else. Anyway, phone number is 888-659-3727. It is an incredibly rainy Tuesday here in Southern California. And I have to say, we do absolutely need the rain, so it's pretty cool. But when it rains here in Southern California, there's a song somewhere in that. For whatever reason, Southern Californians cannot drive in the rain. I've never seen anything like it. You cannot get anywhere. When it rains here, it's like everything just stops. Crazy. Anyway, I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad that we made it. I'm glad that we finally got everything up and running. If you're new to the broadcast, don't know who I am, why I'm here, I'm the founder of the American Hair Loss Association, author of a couple of well-known books on the treatment and prevention and treatment of hair loss, and I'm basically a consumer advocate for men and women who deal with hair loss. It's a bizarre little show. Been doing it for about 17 years, and as to bring Andrew Zarian up again, basically says we do the same show every week, and that's the genius of it. Because 2/3 of you by the age of 35 will suffer with some degree of hair loss, and the fact is, we are catering to and trying to help the largest demographic of all humankind. That's why it works. It's a $3.5 billion a year industry, and 99% of the products and services do not work. Think about that. I was just interviewed for a national radio show, and this host of the radio show happens to be a physician. I'm not going to plug it right now because it's not important. But guy's a really learned man. Nice guy. He is the tops of his field, and he's a well-known radio doctor. But he's obviously a real physician, and he has a practice. It's just amazing to me how little physicians know about hair loss. Now, I know that he needs to do a little radio, and he's catering to a specific audience. So he wants to get all the information out there, so he's asking some questions that seem obvious, but, he's basically trying to do it for his audience. But there's still so much that's unknown to mainstream medicine. The basics about surgical hair restoration, the basics about non-surgical medical treatments for hair loss. So I could see how frustrating it is for you young guys out there who are trying to seek help, who initially may go to their family physician or their dermatologist, and they're just kind of sent away with a bottle of Rogaine. And the doctor wishes you some luck, and that's it. That's why the show is so necessary. He's a guy that I actually used to do a show on WOR. Originally, his flagship was WOR in New York, and so was mine at one point. And that's how we knew each other. And he hadn't spoken to him in about 15 years, and he decided to do another broadcast on hair loss after 15 years. And you would kind of think that after all this time, especially since I was on the show before, that he, would kind of know what's going on. It's not that he's a smart guy. It's just that, sadly, society medicine as a whole doesn't really take hair loss seriously. And that's why this program is so important. For all you guys out there who are really doing their best to do their due diligence, to learn about everything that they need to learn about when they're researching this crazy industry. And they have to understand that, listen, not everything's going to help you. In some cases, you can't be helped. You could be one of those guys who cannot be helped. But you need to know that before you get ripped off or disfigured, or, you just spend many years of your life wasting precious time and money. Phone number is 888-659-3727. And I'm not going to do a whole long monologue today. I'm just going to go straight to the phones. Take some phone calls, have a couple of drinks, and, see where this takes us. Phone number is 888-659-3727. Let's see who this is. Hey, man, you're on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Baz. I'm calling from Oshawa, Ontario.
Hey, Baz. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the show. What can I do for you?
I just had a couple of questions for you. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for doing the show. I've been watching it for just a couple of months now. And, it's crazy. Not a lot of people understand how stressful this is and how, difficult it is to go through this. And, I really appreciate what you do. It seems to really reach out to a lot of people and do some really good things. So thank you for that.
Well, that's really nice of you to say, and welcome to the show. I'm glad you found us and that you've been, watching us for a few months. And so tell us your situation. What's up?
So I'm 24 years old. I'm currently in university, and I started noticing my hair loss at around 21. And, I didn't really care at first, like most people. It wasn't really that big of a deal, I guess. And as it started to get worse, and it really started to bug me more and more, and, I tried the whole natural thing, and, my uncle is a naturopath doctor. I spoke to him about a bunch of things, and supplements, and emu oil, and all the regular natural things.
All the natural stuff that we all try that doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth a shot because, you want to be safe at first. You don't want to, you read all the horror stories online, and you want to be safe, so you decide to do the natural things. But, I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to lose any more hair. And
well, that's an interesting point, and I don't mean to cut you off, but it's important that guys understand this. The key to successful treatment when it comes to hair loss is early intervention. That is key. And a lot of guys will waste, in some cases, years trying unproven treatments, nutritional supplements, herbal supplementation, different types of oils and rosemary oil and emu oil and castor oil and whatever else, whatever nonsense they read about, in my opinion, nonsense they read about on the internet. And then they finally get to a point where either they've lost so much ground that they're miserable, and now they're starting to use an FDA-approved product, or, hopefully, it sounds like you kind of made the decision pretty early on before you lost too much ground.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you decided to do? You don't want to waste any more time.
Yeah, so, it's funny. I spoke to my friend recently because I was having a really down day. And she was like, listen, I'm your friend. If you want to talk, we can talk. And then I went out with her and we got a coffee, and I just told her everything. I just told her straight up exactly what's going on with me and all that. And she was like, I didn't even notice. She's like, honestly, I hadn't even noticed until you shaved your head. I shaved my head in September when I came back from school.
Right.
And, I was just like, okay, if I'm going to do something here, step one, shave your head, because you don't want to have hair in the way of whatever you're doing. So I did that, and, I've been wearing way too many hats lately, and that's not really good. But
yeah, but I think it's important that it's important that you gave that a shot. A lot of guys don't have the balls to shave their head and see if they can live their life. The fact that you did that it's tremendous. I think that's a great first step.
Well, I consider myself fairly lucky because, I'm 6'4". I'm a very masculine looking guy. A lot of girls tell me I'm very quite handsome, and so I can get around with the shaved head look. It's not really that big of a deal.
Well,
I just feel like if I can save my hair, I might as well try. I might as well try whatever I can try. And
well, here's the good news, and you said it yourself. You are one of the lucky ones. You're 6'4". Even your voice sounds, like you're a big dude.
I work out all the time. Yeah, I work all the time. I'm super fit. I'm the most fit I've ever been in my entire life. And it's funny, I got into this whole health craze and exercise craze because of my hair loss. So it's in a way, it's a good thing because it really pushed me to start focusing on myself, on my health, on my well-being, on my mental well-being. It just really made me look at my whole life in a new way. So there is a good side to it, and I do see that good side.
Well, that's a very positive thing that you're saying. But again, right now, and I'm glad that you made that move. You're one of the lucky guys. If you're still able to kind of move on with your life and you still feel like, all right, you'd rather look different. You'd rather have a full head of hair. But if things don't work out, you can be jacked. You're 6 feet tall. You say you have a good-looking face and you look good with a shaved head, good enough where you could still get attractive women, then you win. That you hit the lottery. So, and I want you to know that because even if things don't work out, and I don't know what you plan to do, we'll talk about that, but even if things don't work out, my advice is not even to think about surgery because you win. You could shave your head down and you look good, you win. So tell me what you're thinking about.
Okay, so I did a bunch of research, and I came to the conclusion that I went and I bought Finasteride from my doctor, and I know you're a big Finasteride guy, but honestly, I came home, I was in front of my laptop with the whole forums and all their positive stories and negative stories. I had a hand mirror in one hand, and I had the box of Finasteride in the other hand. And I was just crying my eyes out, and I felt like, I'm at this fork in the road. I need to make a decision, and I decided that I'm not going to take Finasteride. I don't want to mess with my hormones, like you said.
I think that's a responsible decision. I think if you got to go with your gut, man, if it's something that you really feel strongly about and seriously fear, then why give yourself any more anxiety, especially being in the position that you're in?
Yeah. I can get away with it. I can be okay. So I don't even want to start playing that game with, messing my hormones. And I know the side effects are so minimal. And with the amount of testosterone I have in my body, I'd probably be fine. But still, I don't even want to have that thought. That thought in the back of my head would be more of a problem than even the hair or even the potential side effects. Just having that thought. One day I bring a girl home from the bar and I'm really drunk and I can't get it up, I'll freak out and be like, "Oh my God, is it the drug that's doing it?" Meanwhile, it could just be because I'm hammered.
It's probably because it would probably be because you're hammered. But listen, listen, it totally makes sense. I am not here to push Finasteride. I make nothing from Merck. I do not have any stock in the company. I talk about it based on my experience and the experience of a lot of people. And for me, it was what I needed to do when I was 24 years old. And it helped me. It changed my life. And the reason I'm here is because of this drug. Not here on this earth, but, here behind this microphone doing what I do. But if I was a guy like you, I don't know. Back then, you're talking about the late 80s, early 90s, I probably still would have wanted my hair. But now that it is really acceptable and it's very fashionable, I hate to use that term, but to shave your head. And if you're a guy that looks good with it, and if I was one of those guys, I would probably make the same decision you did. So, bravo, you have to go with your gut.
Yeah,
So tell me what you want to do.
Okay, so, I'm trying to take, first and foremost, the minoxidil route. And, I'm not wasting time with, like, the no-name ones or whatever. I wanted to know what you think of Lipogain, because it's got the minoxidil, so it's got somewhat of a functioning thing, but it's also got the natural thing, the whole saw palmetto and I think oxalic acid or something.
Yeah.
It's supposed to inhibit DHT as well.
I have to be honest with you. I have not heard any definitive data showing me that product is any more effective than minoxidil or Rogaine, brand name alone. However, it's going to be more costly, but the fact is, at the very least, you're still getting, and I think it's a 5% minoxidil solution, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 5%.
You're still getting a 5% minoxidil solution. You have the azelaic acid. I always have problems pronouncing that, which has been shown. Dr. Lee, who got into a lot of trouble, unfortunately, for selling concoctions of those two ingredients. Had a lot of success. There were a lot of patients who had success with those type of combinations. So, if you're willing to spend the money and you're comfortable with it, then I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, it's like $25 a month, which is really not that bad. It's less than $1 a day. I don't know. I can
Yeah.
afford it.
And if, psychologically it helps you to kind of add a little boost to your minoxidil, then that's a good thing
Yeah.
anyway. So I
Yeah.
don't see a problem. And again, I'm not a physician, so I'm not giving you medical advice, but I don't see a problem with it. I would normally advise people just to stick with generic minoxidil, give that a shot and see how it works. But I have no problem if someone realizes that they're probably going to be spending a little bit more money, but $25 a month is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I spend more than that one night at the bar, so who cares?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just bought like a $75 bottle of wine. I'm going to destroy it tonight.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
what are you going to do? But
So that's
I think
what I'm
that's
taking.
yeah.
That's what I'm taking at night. During the day, I'm going to use the Rogaine foam because it's more like, it dries quick. You can use it as a styling product. Although my hair is really short right now, once it grows out again, I'll be able to have somewhat of a style like before. And so I use that during the day. I use Lipogaine at night. Internally, I am taking saw palmetto and nettle root and vitamin B. Who knows what they're really doing? But
Well, I don't know if you ever read, and the last book that I had was published by Simon and Schuster or Pocket Books was in 2000. So I still had a chapter in there about herbal supplementation and hair loss.
Okay.
I've definitely changed my tune over the years as far as really recommending herbal supplementation for DHT reduction. And one reason is there's no doubt that guys still have there's a potential of adverse sexual side effects even with these herbs because it is lowering your
Yeah.
DHT. So
Well,
depending
I've been
on
taking them for like a year, and I'm rock hard in the morning. So
yeah,
I don't really.
well, I have to tell you, and this is not to push Propecia because I'm not. You made the right decision for you, but the fact that you're doing well on saw palmetto probably is a good indicator, in my view, at least from anecdotal experience, people who have contacted me, that you probably wouldn't have side effects on finasteride either. But just do what you're doing, and again, you can shave your head and live your life. So I wouldn't screw with my hormones if I was in your position.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I'm not a complete professional, but from what I've read, it says that saw palmetto they reduce your DHT by like 10 to 15%, which is not really that big. Whereas finasteride is more like 60-70%.
Right.
It's way more effective.
Well, it is, and people will up their dosage of saw palmetto and stinging nettle and pygeum africanum, and that combination in some cases can lower your DHT by 50 or 60%. And these are the people that come back to us and report sexual side effects just like they do with finasteride. It's still a relatively small percentage. So, I think, you sound like you have your act together. The fact that you had a mirror in one hand and finasteride in the other hand and you're sitting in front of your computer crying, that tells me you should not take Propecia. That's it. And I'm not goofing on you. That just means that, it's going to cause you a lot of stress. So why put yourself through that?
Yeah.
And I get it. Listen, I say this all the time. If I were 22 years old today, around the time I was a little older, I was 24 when I started taking finasteride, and I had access to the internet and read all these horror stories, there is a good chance that I never would have benefited from the drug because I would not take it. I would scare the shit out of me when, reading all this stuff. So I understand why all these young guys don't want to do it and they're looking for other alternatives. A lot of these guys aren't as lucky as you, though. You're a lucky guy. You're one of the lucky ones. So hopefully your, Rogaine and the other product will work for you. The minoxidil product will work for you. And, you can kind of call us back and say you were able to grow your hair out for a few years. Now, the only thing about these products, in my view, and this is based on experience, is that they kind of act as a Band-Aid. Almost like a temporary fix, but you're how old now? You said you're 24?
24, yeah.
Maybe if you can maintain your hair to your 30 and just knowing in the back of your mind that you still look, really, really good with a shaved head, that might kind of, get you through.
I know that, like my father, I'm basically following exactly the rate that my dad was going at.
Yeah.
So, I feel like if I can just stop it and reverse it a little bit until 30, I'll be happy. I'll consider that an absolute success. If I could just get through my 20s and still have decent hair. I know I'm not going to have the head of hair when I was 18 again,
Right.
but if I could just get some, if I could maybe take the clock back like 2 years where I was like when I was 22 and maintain that until 28, 29, 30, that would be an absolute success for me. I would consider that to be beautiful.
Well, then you're in a good position, man, because it's very possible that, if this works for you, that you can maintain it for several years. So that's it, man. I think you made the right decision, based on what you've told me. I think you made the right decision for you. And look, Finasteride's always going to be there. If you want to change your mind someday down the line, you can. But right now, this is for you. And honestly, I tell everybody, if you can shave your head and move on, don't even listen to the show. Just move on with your life. Forget about hair loss.
Yeah.
But, we're here for you if you want to talk about, the emotional aspects of hair loss or anything you're going through. So I just want you to know that you should feel free to call.
That's really what I'm struggling with the most is just, getting through my day without wearing a hat. I go out sometimes and I try my best. Okay, I'm not going to wear a hat tonight. And then someone makes a comment or, I notice some of my friends really staring, especially since I shaved my head. It's so much more noticeable now. I know a lot of people didn't even realize before, but now it's really noticeable. And it's just like, I'm just having a hard time just enjoying my day-to-day life and going out and having fun with my friends.
But like you said, you're 6'4" and you're fit. It's like, how fit? Like, are you like super MMA fit?
No, I don't have like a six pack yet, but I'm definitely lean. I've got big arms, big shoulders. I'm very masculine face, deep voice. I'm just like, I'm testosterone is flowing out of my freaking ears.
Yeah. And so how are women reacting to you when you go out?
If I'm wearing a hat, I can get pretty much any girl in the bar. That's for sure.
All right. Well, that's a plus. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm not, then I just come off like I'm a little bit older. I guess I look a little bit older than everybody else. And even with a full head of hair, I'd still look older than everybody because I'm just like a lot bigger than all of my friends.
So this is my suggestion to you. You're 24 years old. I would suggest that you concentrate on your career. And at this stage in your life, you just want to get laid anyway. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Go for the 30-year-old chicks that, have not gotten married yet. The girls that maybe have, not had luck, they weren't lucky in love. They may have partied a little too hard. They are out there wanting to have fun and have sex with the younger guys, and they have no problem with guys who have a receding hairline. And especially if you look good, the way that you say that you do.
I don't think that I have to just settle on chicks that are older than me. I feel like I can still get the girls.
But that's not settling, dude. That's not settling. That is just, going out and having fun. You think a 30-year-old woman is old? Are you kidding me, man? Holy cow.
It's not that. I just feel like I shouldn't have to cut off a certain age group of girl because I feel like I can't get them anymore. I can get whoever I want. I just have to put my mind to it.
Well,
I know that.
Then there you go. My suggestion is, the reason I made that suggestion is because I know how women who just, are 29, 30 years old, how they think. And they still look great. They're still really young. And if you're out there just trying to concentrate on your career and have sex, then they're the perfect woman for you. You want to get into a relationship and all that, and you want to be with women your own age, that's fine. I'm glad that you feel confident enough to know that you have no problem getting who you want. That's a big step. The fact that you even said that to me shows me that you're really confident. So
I know it's possible. It's in me. I just have to get over this as quickly as possible. Maybe the treatments work, maybe they won't work, but my emotional state has to be grounded, and I really want to get there quickly.
Look, I had the same attitude as you did, and I had crazy. I started to wear hairspray and all kinds of stuff at 24, 25 years old. Very slight, not a major comb over yet, but very slight, like weirdness of the hair. And I'm not 6'4", I'm 6 feet tall. I mean, you definitely have some height on me. But I was in relatively good shape, and I felt really, confident in my personality. And I went out, and I kind of felt the same way that you did. No matter what, I'm going to figure out a way to have a good time and get the women that I want to get. And that's a good attitude. A lot of guys can't do that. They don't have enough inside them to make that happen. So I think you're in a pretty good psychological position. I think you've done well for yourself. I'm glad that you're calling the program. I think this is an important story. But, I know that you're struggling, but just, take solace in knowing that. I say take solace, but just realize that you're not alone, and also you're in a lot better position than a lot of guys your age who are dealing with hair loss.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. I see the other guys, and I'm like, man, like I can't even imagine what these other guys are going through. You know, the guys who are shorter, they're chubby, they don't really take care of themselves.
That's right.
And their hair's falling out. It's just like, I want to reach out to them, and I want to be like, listen, man, it's not over. Just keep fighting. We can get through this. But if they don't want it, if they've given up, you know, I don't even want that negative energy in my life.
I was thinking that maybe we should have like some kind of like BTT cards made, like kind of like the Fight Club, where
Yeah.
you know guys can you know download these cards, make cards, and kind of hand them out to people. And it's kind of like the secret society. Maybe we'll figure something out. But listen, man, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be a good idea, actually.
Well, we'll think about that. I'll put my my thinking cap on and try to figure something out. But listen, I wish you the best of luck. Call anytime. I really appreciate your call. We're going to take some more calls. And again, I think you're in a good position. So just kind of take solace in that and realize that the fact that you know that you're still attractive and that you can live your life even with a shaved head, even though now you look a little older, what's the difference? Everyone's going to catch up anyway. In time, most of your peers are going to be losing their hair.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And you're already ahead of the game. So as far as
And I'll
getting
already be
fit.
over it, and I'll already be, you know, I'll know how to deal with it when they're just starting this journey.
That's right. And if you have any problems, you know, again, feel free to call when we're live, and I'd be more than happy to take your call.
Can I ask you one more quick question before we go?
Yeah, sure.
So you know the study that was done in 2013 in India, the one with the derma roller and the minoxidil?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm following that regime. I started 3 weeks now. I've done the derma roller once a week.
You know,
Is it a waste of time, or should I? What do you think?
This is the thing. I do know there are some guys that really believe that derma rolling can really help not only to increase collagen production, but might stimulate hair growth alone, with or without minoxidil.
Yeah.
The fact that you are increasing the possible absorption rate of minoxidil, it's you know it could be a positive thing, but it also, depending on how you react, could also cause a lot of dermatological issues, and also basically you can cause a lot of irritation to the scalp and make it more difficult for you to use topicals in the long term. So you have to kind of feel it out. I think as long as you're not really damaging your scalp, you're not seeing blood, you're not going in there.
I do it once a week, and I don't use minoxidil on that day. I wait till the next day before I use the minoxidil. And, you know, I don't really actually roll. I just kind of press it in the thinning spots until I see some redness, and then I stop. I don't go too crazy with it like these guys who are cutting themselves open. They're just going insane.
I think the way you're doing it is good, and there is some clinical evidence showing that you know, creating these type of abrasions using the roller can stimulate not only collagen, like I said, but actually stimulate hair growth. So I think the way you're doing it is fine. Again, I'm not a physician. Just don't go crazy with it. And I think it's a good idea not to try to put minoxidil on after you roll. A lot of guys do, and I know the study you're talking about. I don't think it's a great idea.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Listen, I wish you the best of luck.
Cool.
All right, take care. Thanks for the call.
Much.
You got it.
Yeah.
888-659-3727. Let's see who this is. Hey, you are on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
I thought I was calling the hair show.
You got it.
I tuned in and I heard something about being rock hard and being muscular, and I wasn't quite sure I got the right.
Yeah,
you got
show. You got the right show. What's happening, Joe Tillman?
Oh,
How
okay,
are you?
okay. Hey, how's it going?
I cannot complain.
You
know,
lot, man.
I wasn't going to drink on the show tonight. I promised myself, but after trying to get on the air for like 45 minutes, trying to get things to work, I'm like, you know what? I need a drink. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a valid excuse.
Yeah,
I like that.
So you heard this guy. This guy's actually calling from Canada himself. You know,
Yeah.
I like hearing young guys with good attitudes like this. Again, he's one of the luckier guys. The fact that he's 6'4" and he's he's in good shape and he has broad shoulders and all that stuff, that helps in the entire equation when you're dealing with your hair loss.
Of course, because it's just a few things less to worry about. You know, I mean, big guys are. I've always thought that there's been a natural aura that bigger guys have, right? I mean, when you have a bigger guy in the room, you know, ladies their eyes tend to catch them more than they would the other guys because they stand out. And it's just a natural feature that a lot of people find attractive. So that's why I always walk in with stilts.
Yeah,
But
that's why you wear lifts in your shoes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Michael J. Fox. But yeah, no, he sounded like he had a good attitude, and I didn't catch all of it, but I heard him say something about swearing off Finasteride, and he made that decision, and that's cool,
Well,
And
he admitted that he has a friend who's a woman, and he wanted to hang out, and basically broke down and told her everything, and she was pretty supportive. And then he went out and got a prescription from his physician, actually purchased Finasteride, and he's sitting in front of his computer reading all the horror stories with a mirror in one hand and Finasteride in the other. And he said he broke down and he just couldn't take it. He started to cry, and I kind of understand that. I say it all the time. And I was just on I was talking about being on his national radio show yesterday, and I was talking about that it's true. While I believe there is this, there is some mass hysteria when it comes to finasteride, there's certainly a subset of guys who are suffering with these side effects, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But, if I would have read about this now, if I was 22 today, I probably wouldn't take it. And to me, that's unfortunate because I know how well I've done on it for the last 20 years. If I had this information in front of me, or if I read all this hysteria, I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have, had this career. I wouldn't have been behind this mic, helping so many people over the years. So I do think a lot of guys are doing themselves a disservice, but I also get it because I probably wouldn't take it after reading all this stuff that's online.
I wouldn't. You and I, neither one of us would exist in this industry because, it's worked great for me. It's worked great for you. Some people argue that I already lost all my hair, so there's not much for it to hang on to. But I
disagree with that. Actually,
I disagree with it wholeheartedly because it strengthened what hair I had, and I could have gone further with my loss. And had I done that, then it would have been a disaster. So obviously, it's worked well for me. It's worked well for you and countless other guys. But I agree. I mean, if I were a young guy today and I was researching my options, I found finasteride and then saw the side effects that guys are talking about, no, I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Look, I was just talking to a buddy of mine today who was considering having a diagnostic procedure, like an imaging procedure, done. And for whatever reason, I'm not going to get into the specifics, after reading about some stuff that he needs to do to have this done online, he's very concerned about it. I understand it. And when I spoke to him, I said, you got to go with your gut. But this is a guy that's been on Propecia that pops this pill every day. He's been on it for like over a decade. And if I would have said today to him, you know what, if he asked me about his hair loss, you got to get on finasteride, he would have gone online, he would have read about it, and he would have had the same issues. He wouldn't have taken it.
Yeah.
This guy's had significant success on it as well. He's been on it for over a decade. And he's probably been on it for about 15 years now. So, that's just the way that it is. That's just the way that, when was finasteride approved? Was it 17 years ago now, right? So,
As Propecia, it was 96, I think.
It was 90. It was December of 97. It was right. Before my book was published. So.
And Proscar,
Proscar was 92.
Like 3 or 4 years before. 92, yeah.
92, yeah. So he was on it. I guess probably for about 15 years. So
now, did he get on it because of you? Did you know him back then?
Yeah, we grew up together.
Okay.
And that's the only reason he got on it was because of me and what I do and because of my experience. But he wasn't going online. He wasn't reading about it. He wasn't, he's not a guy that goes on the message forums. And as a matter of fact, many of the guys that I grew up with are now taking finasteride, based on my advice. And none of them, not a single one of them. There's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 dudes that I knew. 7. Not one has any adverse side effects. Now, that's a very small group of guys. But you would think that at least 1 out of the 7 would have some adverse side effects. They're not reading about it. Now, after all this stuff came out in the news, one guy contacted me, and he sent me an article from, I think it was one of the British tabloids. And this is when all this stuff first started coming out about post-finasteride syndrome. And he's like, "What do you make of this?" And I explained it to him. And he's like, "Okay, I was just checking." And that was it. He hasn't thought about it. He has kids, you know. So, I mean, I don't know what to make of it, except I know for a fact I would do exactly what this kid did, and I would not take the drug. And so I can't tell people to take it. I can't say, "Hey, you should take this." I just tell them about my experience.
I think it's sad that we're in that position now. We can't tell people what we probably think is the best thing for them, because at this point we don't know anymore, and it's unfortunate. I wish it was more reliable as far as that goes, to where we didn't have people talking about it, and obviously not because they didn't have the problem to begin with, but.
Yeah, but you're also going to get slammed online, like you have some sort of interest in Merck, and honestly, who needs it? You guys don't want to take it, don't take it. I'll keep my hair, do what I need to do, live my life. Those who are willing to take it, and who see the benefit, versus the potential risk, then it's there for them, and that's it. Everyone else doesn't have to take it.
Yeah, there's no big conspiracy here, right? It works for most guys, and we make a lot of money from it. So, You know
what? I wish that were true, because I'd have a big propitious sign on right now if that were the case.
Be down on the street corner with a sandwich board.
Oh, I'd be flipping around whatever it takes. So, what else is happening, man? Before we take some more calls, what's going on?
Oh gosh, what is going on? I don't know. It's just I've been on the forums a lot lately, and just seeing what's going on there. And there's some things that the forums are always interesting to me. I'm kind of addicted to them, simply because I came up on the forums, and that's
Well, that was your thing. And that's how you became famous.
Yeah, that was my thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's like I'll be traveling someplace, and if I get an internet connection, I'll pop on Bald Truth Talk and see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. I have no life, but.
But you know what? Apparently, it's not just you, because the traffic is going through the roof. And I even tell people, stay off the effing forums, but they don't listen to me.
That's just a marketing angle, man. Because you know as well as I do. You tell people not to do something, they're going to do it.
Well, I guess you're right about that. But I can see it does become it's an addictive thing. I do remember early on in my career, I would go on to the old news group. Newsnet groups? What are they called? The Usenet groups.
Yeah.
And I'd be reading everything, and just the craziness. I saw the craziness back then. I knew these weren't healthy environments. But I understand the addiction, because you see all these different threads, and they become soap operas. And, I don't spend a lot of time on Bald Truth Talk, and I know that I should. And you brought up something today that I took a look at the thread, which I found interesting about the last show that I posted. But I know that I would get sucked back into it, even on my own forum. So I try to stay away from it. And
that's healthy. It's. For me, it's not nearly as addictive as it used to be, simply because I had different reasons, I guess. But I mean, now it's just so I can keep up on what people are talking about, and to keep my finger on the pulse of the mentality and the perception that people have. And like that thread that we were discussing earlier, Dr. Mark Dower you're interviewing him about his use of FUE, and it was basically a short surgical discussion. And one of the forum members that was viewing it said, "Hey, no one wants to know about this." And I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Right.
What people really want to know about are the cellular-based non-surgical treatments. And I got into kind of a back and forth with the guy. Nice guy, very articulate, smart.
You pointed me to, and I read it, and the guy does seem like he writes really well. He expresses himself on paper, quote unquote, really well. Yeah. And I like reading stuff like that. I disagree with him, but I thought that he really presented it well.
With him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he presented it well, but I totally disagree with him. And it's like, in posts like that, just kind of highlight for me the disconnect between the forum world and people that are, I would guess, constantly looking at this type of information and looking for that certain something that no one has mentioned yet, so they can announce it to the world. Hey, look, I found the cure.
Yeah.
in this company.
I found this
weird.
obscure study out of India or wherever.
Yeah,
And here it is, guys. And then all of a sudden, it's a 7,000 page thread,
exactly.
and people are battling it out, and yeah.
But there's a difference between that and then the other side of the equation, which is called reality. And
right.
I have talked to literally thousands of people face to face over the past 11, 12 years. And I can probably count on one hand the number of people that said, hey, aside from When's Cloning coming out, what do you know about this treatment and this study? And, this isn't what people read about. They don't automatically think there's some sort of cellular treatment coming out. And you start talking, and like I said in my one post, I said, you start talking about this stuff to the average person that's looking into hair restoration or, what have you, their eyes will glaze over.
Well, and
they have no clue.
And these guys have to realize, yes, these things are posted on the message forum, these interviews, and these broadcasts. But for the most part, the stuff that we do, the stuff that I do, is really for the mainstream guys, the guys that are out there that are doing their research, that happen to find us online, and we provide them with current information about what they can do today. Yes, we're going to talk about the pipeline treatments, future treatments, things that are on the horizon. But people want to be helped today. And when I'm at a party, when I'm out, and I'm talking about when I'm speaking to learned, well-heeled, really successful people, the first thing they usually ask me about is either Bosley or the Hair Club.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and none of these guys had anything done yet. Some of these guys may have tried minoxidil back in the day, but the main reason they are not getting any, surgical hair restoration, for instance, the main reason they're not having surgery is because they believe that hair transplantation is basically, old cornrows or plugs. They still, to this day, they still believe that.
They still use the terminology. I would still, even up until recently, people walk in and say, how many plugs can I get? I look at them and like, what?
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you what's interesting. I was on this national radio show, and I don't want to name the guy's name because he's a really famous, well-known, very well-respected guy. But, he actually said plugs to me. You were talking about follicular unit transplantation. I was kind of describing the differences between FUE and FUT. And when I mentioned FUT, the strip method, he said, oh, yeah, plugs. And I'm like,
yeah.
And what's funny is I did this guy's show a couple of times, like 15 years ago. And it's not his fault. It's just it's society. And this is a doctor.
Yeah.
This is a really smart guy, incredibly successful, radio doctor. But even this guy who has a mass media appeal will refer to surgical hair restoration as a physician as plugs. So that's why people don't have it done.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've mentioned several times. It's ingrained in media,
in the fabric of our culture.
Fabric of our culture. When you're watching the news and they got some sort of fluff story piece before the sports segment comes on, they cut away to Bob down at the local clinic. It's not just plugs anymore, people, and it's.
That's right, and then they played the theme from Hair, the musical, the main song, and then they cut away. And then they'll, and then they'll have some some ridiculous banter between the anchors, and then they'll go on to the next story. And that's the way that it is. So for the guy, and I forget his handle because I read it really quickly when I was on the phone with you, but for the guy that really believes that the reason why only 5% of hair loss sufferers seek out current treatments is because the current treatments have such limitations, that's not the reason why. One reason why also, as far as medication is concerned, is that minoxidil has certainly, at least in the mainstream culture, has gotten the reputation of only, growing peach fuzz. So people automatically think that doesn't work. And to some degree, they're not incorrect. I mean, it does benefit a lot of people, especially if they're compliant. Finasteride now or Propecia, everyone thinks that they're going to have a limp dick, so that's out, and that's based on what they hear about in the mainstream through the mainstream media. And hair transplantation is plugs. Hair pieces, hair systems, that is completely out of the picture as far as the mainstream, even though it is still the most utilized treatment, quote unquote, when it comes to hair restoration, hair pieces. But people don't want to talk about them, and people refuse to consider them. I had a chick from high school contacted me through Facebook about her husband, asked me some questions, said her husband wanted to speak to me, and she sent me a picture. And I asked how long he was losing his hair. She sent me a picture. The guy had significant hair loss. He was like approaching a 6 with, some, diffuse hair loss, all around the top of his scalp. I suggested that maybe a hair system would be a better option than for him. This guy wanted to get a laser helmet, okay? And as soon as I said hair system, her first, she was writing this through Facebook. She says, "No rugs!" Exclamation! Exclamation! Exclamation!
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, whatever, and that's why people aren't getting anything done. Period. It's not because of the reality of the limitations of these procedures.
Exactly. It's the question mark. It's just not knowing. It's not having an understanding of the surgical options and being in the dark.
It's funny. As far as we've come. Okay, when you look up hair loss treatments, whatever it is, one of the first organic sites is the American Hair Loss Association. In most markets, people skip us, and they end up going to the other places first, making a mistake, buying a bogus product or service, or getting disfigured or whatever, and then coming back, kind of circling back. But if they would take the time to really educate themselves, I think, A, it would be great for the industry because a lot more people would consider, the current options that are available. And I think it would be great as far as the way society looks at hair loss, but it's just always coming to us. It's like, it almost seems like a last resort.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's not coming to you as a last resort. It's coming to you as a source of clarification, of clarity, because look, people aren't coming into hair restoration thinking, wow, I need to really do my research because there's so many bad places and so many people that want to take my money. It's more like we're almost ingrained from birth to trust our doctors. So, oh yeah, well, anyone can do this. Just like boob jobs, liposuction, tummy tucks, anyone can do them. So of course anyone can do hair. That's the mentality. That's the reason why I think, valuable sites that have real value, like American Hair Loss Association, are overlooked when someone's scanning the first 10 results, looking to see what's popped up on their search page.
Right.
It's because it's not something that people recognize as being a necessity.
Well, this is what I notice, and if we actually look at the back end of the site, what I notice is a lot of clicks. People are coming through. We have tremendous traffic, okay? So people maybe read one article. And listen, there's no doubt. I mean, that site has not been updated since the Civil War, so we got to make some changes. but it still has really good basic information if someone wants to get an education on what to avoid and what works and what doesn't. They read a couple of pages, and then because they don't see anything that they can do for themselves right away, they will, kind of move on. But then I will see the people that are just, they read like 50 pages of the site. And I know, even though I can't, there's no stats that go back like to figure out whether or not this person was on the site before, unless it's a short period of time. But I have a feeling that those are the people that got screwed and that are now deciding to really read about it and do their due diligence and do their research.
Those are the people that used to walk into my office as a repair job or just out of surgery from someplace else saying, yeah, I went to so-and-so to have surgery, and then I went online and started doing research and found out about you or found out that maybe what I did wasn't the best idea. And that goes back to what I was talking about where, no one walks into this thinking that they need to have their guard up. right?
And
And I
that's
think,
unfortunate, because I think anytime you walk into anything, especially when it has to do with your health, you have to have your guard up. And
yeah,
and I understand what you're saying, and it makes total sense. We are reared to believe that, a physician is a physician, and if you're getting advice from a doctor, or if that this is the way science has evolved. There are these great techniques out there, and if it's out there and the doctor is offering it, then he must be an expert, just like the guy down the road. It's all the same thing.
right.
It's a one size fits all situation.
Yeah, and they start shopping by price, right?
They're shopping by price, and and
Yeah.
sometimes they shop by price, or they shop by like review sites and things like that. And that's that. First of all, anyone who is getting information from Yelp or from one of these plastic surgery websites that has like stars and thumbs up and stuff like that, you have
Yeah.
to rethink your research, because that is a huge mistake. In my view, well, I've known people who have rigged these sites. Let's put it this way: we have caught physicians who have been caught rigging their reviews on these sites. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
No doubt.
so I would say that a lot of these things are potentially rigged. So you can't take what you read online, especially on review sites, with
Yelp
any.
is great for sushi, but not great for hair transplants.
You know what? And the thing is, very few people are going to take the time to really put up a lot of fake reviews on, for like, Sugarfish and, other sushi places. Most of those
Yeah.
reviews are going to be real. You're going to
Sugarfish.
hire.
Is that there in is that there in Calabasas? Sugarfish?
They do
I
have one
think
in
it was there.
Calabasas. Yeah.
I think it was there. Yeah.
Oh, were you?
Well, back when I was in LA.
That's right, with your brother.
Yeah. It was me, my brother, and his girlfriend went there.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how close it is, but it's several miles away, but close enough.
Yes, and that's
Yeah,
what matters.
that's all that matters. But yeah, listen, it's a big mess out there. People don't realize it, and I think this is a good transition. We were talking about this earlier about people who are we see a lot of talk online about the price of FUE. And that the price should be coming down, and why is it so expensive, and why there's always been this argument between strip and FUE pricing, and you made some really good points. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I wrote an article because one thing, back to the forum things, that's another reason why I look at the forums is because I'm looking for the questions being asked that will fuel my bug to write. And because I love writing, and
That's right. You wrote an article for your website, hairtransplantmentor.com.
yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you. And
Sure.
the question has to do with why is FUE so pricey?
Look, if you're going to take the time to call
And-
the show to say hi, I might as well plug your website.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know what? I think I'll plug your website too.
Thank you.
Check out baldtruthtalk.com.
I appreciate that.
Gotcha. But no, it's back in the day. I mean, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, people were arguing, trying. One of the many things that they're arguing about the advantages of, or not advantages of FUE, but just talking about the motives for FUE and the money that can be made from a strip surgery for the clinic versus FUE. And I don't know how people came up with the math, but they kept arguing that strip clinics, because they're cranking out, some clinics were cranking out so many grafts in one session that they were making far more money than a typical FUE clinic.
Well, let me tell you who I believe started this, and that was Ray Woods. Ray Woods came out back in the day, and one of his main points that he really tried to make, and again, this is just from my experience with Ray, and again, I think he's a good doctor, and I thank God that he came up with the Woods technique, and it really helped to evolve this field. He's done some great things. Mm-hmm. But the way that he was marketing it is basically he would say, and I think he even said this on my radio show at one point when he came to L.A. I had him on live in studio at Westwood One. And he was talking about, and anyone out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just from my recollection, so it might not be, precise. But He said that, there are guys out there that just want to do strip because they can do 3 procedures in a day and just cut out the strip and hand it off to their technicians and yada, yada, yada. But what he neglected to say is that each of these technicians has to be paid.
Yeah.
The overhead to perform a really state-of-the-art strip procedure is significantly more. And you know this because you work for a big strip clinic than to perform the average FUE procedure. So I'm going to let you take the lead on this because you actually have been in the trenches, seeing this every day for the last 11 years.
Well, I think I recall. Yeah, I think you're right about Dr. Woods starting that. But when you think about what that statement entails, three strips in one day. It's not just the text; it's the facilities to be able to handle 3 surgeries in one day, right? And make no mistake about it, if you're a clinic that wants to do well, you're not going to have your clinic out in the middle of the boonies. You want to have it into a busy area, and so it's going to be more expensive.
You're talking about the highest rents. You need a huge staff, not just a surgical staff, but if you're actually able to accommodate 3 surgeries, 3 operating rooms, or what do you guys call them? Operating theaters, ORs, yeah. And be able to maintain that staff and that front office. I mean, the margins are so much less than performing FUE. And I made those points years ago, but this was something that he really drove home, and that kind of got in the minds of the online world. And this has been perpetuated for years.
I argued against that for years as well. And when you look at the basics, okay, just 2 clinics equally, very good at what they do. One does strip, one does FUE. You got to look at the basic requirements. Okay, so say you're doing 2 surgeries, just to keep it interesting.
Right.
For those 2 surgeries in a strip clinic, you don't have just 3 people assisting and then dissecting grafts with the microscopes and inserting. You got to have a fairly large team. I mean, one surgery alone requires, you got 1 technician assisting with the strip removal, and then you'll have minimum 5 technicians dissecting those grafts.
Right.
And then potentially another 2 that are going to come in and start placing while the other staff are still dissecting.
And then if it's a big case, you have to rotate those 2 that are placing. So that's another 2.
Exactly. And so in a busy practice that's doing 2 surgeries a day, two fairly good sized surgeries a day with strip, you're looking at anywhere from 8 to 10 or even 12 technicians that don't make minimum wage.
Oh no,
they're making
good money. They can make $30 an hour or more in some cases.
Yeah. Because any clinic that wants to have good staff knows that you got to pay for it.
Right.
And especially if you're in a city that has multiple clinics, because the clinics will be trying to poach each other's technicians left and right. So you got to pay them well, you got to treat them well. And
I used to find it really interesting because Ray would charge a really decent amount. And I'm not going to say how much he charged back. And I'm talking like 1999, 2000. I mean, this was big money. When a case would cost $10, $12 to $20,000, that's a lot of money. And so he had relatively no overhead. Okay, it was him and his sister doing all the work. So yes, it was a grind. It was a very difficult day, and multiple days. But that money was in his pocket. Those margins were low. Those rents were, relative to a big city here in the U.S., those rents were probably relatively low. I always found that interesting. I never really wanted to push the issue, but I remember you kind of battling that online to some degree.
I mean, it wasn't a huge deal because it's just one of many issues that people were discussing, and in the end, it didn't really have any relevance to the quality of either procedure. But it was just an attempt by some people to further discredit the strip procedures of the day by saying, well, your doctor is making so much more money, which for some reason that's a bad thing. I don't get it. But when
it's not it's not a bad thing, but B, it's just not true. It wasn't true.
Well,
exactly. More importantly, it wasn't true.
Yeah, and then when you look at look at then versus today, there's a really big disparity occurring, because back in, let's just say 10 years ago, the average cost for FUE was probably maybe between $8 and $12, I would say, and the average cost for a good strip was about $5.
Right.
And these clinics were justifying the price with a couple of angles. One being it's the exotic nature of the procedure. It's new. It's sexy. It's something that's going to leave your donor looking so much better. And,
right. It's less invasive. There's less downtime. They pushed it as being more labor intensive, when it was more labor intensive for the physician, for sure. But times have changed, and frankly, as you know, and I'll let you talk about this. Even in some of the better clinics, physicians aren't really performing FUE. Now, Mark Dower is one of the few guys, and John Cole, but Mark Dower is one of the few guys that, and I can say that Mark is doing all of the extractions himself, which that's pretty unique. It
is unique.
That's not happening today in most facilities.
No, and that's how the procedure has evolved, and it's one of the ways that FUE is spreading so fast is that doctors are realizing, depending on the market they're in, I don't need to be doing this.
No,
I can just hire a technician to do this.
And I have to tell you, with that said, some of these techs are really good. So it's not as though they're getting an inferior product. It's just that patients don't understand what they're getting and who's performing the surgery.
Well, look, back 10 years ago, when you were paying your $10 a graft, your $8 a graft, your $12 a graft, you were pretty much assured of getting the doctor, because
that's right.
There weren't very many of them doing it. But now you fast forward to 2014, 2015, you've got, when you go online and you look for a hair transplant clinic, you're going to find more FUE clinics only than you will strip clinics, or a combination of FUE strip clinics. And so the whole notion that this is a unique and exotic procedure is, throw that out the window.
Yeah, that's done. Everyone's doing it now, for sure.
Everyone's doing it. And so, you cut that part out of the justification for the higher price, and then you've got one final point, and that is, well, it's more intensive for the doctor. But the problem is that most clinics, it's not the doctor doing the extractions. It is a technician or technicians, one or two, depending on what's going on. And the doctor might come in and do a little bit just to test. A lot of times the doctor won't. And then, their job is just kind of reduced to coming in, making the incisions so that the technicians can place the grafts. And
there are actually several clinics that are doing stick and place with FUE now.
Yeah.
So the doctor is maybe designing the hairline using some ink, and maybe doing some of the finer refinement of the frontal hairline. But a lot of technicians now are doing a stick and place. So it's not atypical. It's happening more and more. And a lot of the guys, there's some great clinics in Turkey. There are two guys that that we recommend through the IHRS. They're doing incredible work. But make no mistake, the Turks have certainly gotten this down to kind of like a science. And these guys are, I'm going to say they're surgical, but these guys really, they have machines. They've developed these incredible teams, and they've really gotten down to a science. And I think, this is what I think, and I'll you can tell me what you think, but I think that as long as, and we discussed this, and you agreed, but as long as the patient really understands fully what they're getting involved in, and the technicians are going to be doing most of the work, and they like the results that they're seeing, then that's fine. My concern is guys that have no clue. And then all of a sudden we get an email or someone posts something on a forum saying that, I went to Dr. So-and-so and, the guy wasn't even in the room for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I decided to have surgery with him based on his credentials. I think that,
Credentials.
I'm sorry?
His credentials.
His credentials, yeah.
Which does not equate to time in the OR.
That's right.
And
and doesn't equate to the credentials of his team.
Exactly. And yeah, so I agree 100% that as long as people know up front what they're getting into, I've said this for years. As long as the results are there and it's being done in a safely sterile environment, the whole 9 yards, and that's what you like, then that's what matters, because that's what you're going for. You're not going for any other reason except for the result that you expect to get. But it is extremely important for people to know, if they're going to Clinic X, who else is involved? Who's doing the work?
Right.
Is it Dr. So-and-so that you're going to be having, that's going to be working on you, or will it be his small team of technicians that are doing 95% of the work? There's nothing wrong with it. It's just people need to know up front.
Yeah, but listen, I would say that there are some teams out there, and there are some IHRS members who are utilizing teams that, they're doing great work. But here is my issue, and this is why I am absolutely, and I talk about artists all the time, because I really believe that this is the future of surgical hair restoration. And one main aspect that I really like about robotic hair transplant surgery is that it eliminates a lot of the human variables and human fatigue. And when you're dealing with 3, sometimes 6, different technicians, rotating and removing those grafts and dissecting those grafts, you're dealing with 6 different personalities. You're dealing with people who, maybe someone just, lost their dog, or their boyfriend broke up with them, or whatever, I call it the hangover factor. Maybe they got, effed up the night before. And every, basically your hair transplant is only going to be as good as the weakest link in that chain.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of replace those variables with something that's precise, I personally think that, in time, that could be the holy grail as far as moving hair, as far as doing, a conventional hair transplant.
I just thought of something. I think it would be interesting to see the results from an artist in the hairline on like line up 20 guys. What I'm thinking of is, there are guys online, they're talking about their results, how they're happy with it, but not 100%, because this side didn't come in, this temple didn't come in as strong as this temple.
Right.
I see this a lot.
Oh yeah.
But
there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be the human factor. It could be handling the grafts, or it could just be, a biological factor.
Of course, but I'd like to. I'm interesting. I think it'd be interesting to see if the fatigue factor and the personality factor, as he said, is eliminated in results from artists in hairline work. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. It's not something to be quantifiable, but
this is something that's happening with artists, which I find exciting. They are really, getting to the point where they are going to be able to create recipient sites. I've seen some of the work, and at least as far as, seeing somebody directly after procedure, after a few days, once the recipient area starts to heal, you're always going to see some defects. That's the way that it is. And even when it's completely healed, even in the best hands, because you have a human being who's making these recipient sites, I can find the defects in the scalp. Doesn't mean that the average person is going to find it, but they're always there.
Yeah.
What I've seen with the artist, at least in this initial iteration, which is pretty outstanding, is that the head seems to look like glass. There is no, defect. There's no deviation. There's no change in skin color. There's no, sometimes you get that kind of slight shininess or raised appearance. It's not necessarily cobblestoning, but it's kind of like a variable of that, even in the best hands. That seems to be eliminated with their new site creation software. I'm hoping, that this continues. I don't know. This is just what I've seen so far. But
well, it's like we've been talking about. I mean, some people online were kind of giving me a hard time about it, but facts are facts. They're pushing this, and they're very anxious to find every little way that they can improve it that's possible. And anytime that they see a way to improve it, they do.
Look, all I can tell you is they're in contact with me a lot. And I think the reason they're in contact with me is because they want to know. We have our finger on the pulse of what's going on. They want to know what needs to be changed, what needs to improve. No other company's ever done that. You know who contacts me? These companies contact me and they're like, listen, we will give you 7 figures a year if you endorse our product. And if I tell them, well, you know what, this is what needs to be done. Not that I don't want the money. This is what needs to be done. You need to listen to the consumer. And right now, really, this can't compete with this particular product can't compete with what's out there. They don't give a shit. They're just like, well, do you want it or not? So I've had to turn it down all these years. Artist comes to me and their first thing is, hey, listen, we want to learn from you. We love what you're doing, and we want to learn from you. And what can we do to improve what we're doing? And I've never experienced that before. And they've already...
It's so simple. That's so simple. It's like, why haven't other companies done this? Come to people in the industry that know what they're talking about and say, I'd like for you to critique and give some feedback so that we can make our product better.
Well, this is why, because there's obviously, they've built what they consider to be a better mousetrap, and all they want to do is market it. I'm not talking about artists, but these other companies. They just want to market it. So they actually think, okay, well, listen, this guy has a tremendous reach. He has a lot of pull when it comes to the physicians in this industry. All we do is have to get him under our wing, to work with him and give him a paycheck, and he's going to get us to where we need to go. Now, I'm not saying that, everything that I do in this world is altruistic, but to me, I've always said, in order to really do well in what I do, I promote good medicine. Anyone can promote bad medicine and make a quick buck. But if you want to last and you want to, continue like I do, continue on this field and do well, I always thought, in the end, you're going to make more money promoting good medicine anyway. So it just may take a little bit longer. I like what Artist is doing, and I'm, there's a lot of consideration there. We're really considering, kind of working more closely and trying to, and I'll tell you one major reason is, I think all of the guys on the IHRS are doing state-of-the-art work. I think that most of the guys are open to the evolution of the field who are in the IHRS. I'm seeing the best of the best embracing the artist. I'm talking about Bob Bernstein. I'm talking about Bill Yates. I'm talking about Bob Haber, who's a really conservative guy. And he is like, he's over the moon about this, at least, from what I understand. I know Bob Bernstein for sure is like, he's all in. And these are some of the biggest names in the industry. And it's not just, they don't need the money. They've been in the business for a long time. They have plenty of patience. They're not just doing this for marketing. So, I'm becoming more and more convinced that there's no doubt that it's either the artist or some other type of some other robot that's going to be the future of the industry.
Yeah.
And
I can see it. I mean, I'm always skeptical, and I mean, how I felt about it before, but the more I learn about it,
I said it publicly.
Optimistic.
From 2011, I was like, dude, you guys can't. There's no way. This is not going to work. The punches are too big. It's it's a great idea, but you guys aren't even close. And even when I was contacted back then by some physicians in the field that were like, listen, you need to get involved with these guys. I'm like, there's no way. I'm not touching this. It's not going to happen. But the company listened. I've actually never experienced anything like it. So, I do think that, I was talking about pricing, I do think that when it comes to, as the field evolves, a lot of people think that once it becomes automated, it's going to get cheaper. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen because just based on, they will actually start having overhead if they do start incorporating these machines into their practice. Right now, the guys that are charging more for FUE aren't necessarily doing it because it's so much more labor intensive, like you said.
Well, the the potential here is that as more people sign on with artists, which will have costs associated with it that the clinics will have to recoup through the cost per graft, this might encourage the non-artist physicians to drop their price for FUE.
Right.
To compete.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know, I didn't think about it earlier, but as it stands today, in today's marketplace for hair restoration, you've got, I mentioned the average cost 10 years ago for strip and FUE. FUE was roughly, $8 to $12 a graft, and strip was roughly $5, between $4 and $5. Today, strip is still, it's gone down a little bit, maybe $3 to $5. And FUE is still $8 to $10 for per graft.
Yeah.
And
well, but and as you know, listen, any physician, any practice is going to charge whatever the market will bear, and because the market has evolved this way, listen, the whole thing's been commoditized. So, it was the large chain clinics that started to charge per graft as opposed to per procedure. And I kind of get it. It makes sense. It's easier. It's more palatable for consumers to kind of understand. It also gives, physicians the ability to charge a lot more. This is the most expensive cosmetic surgery known to man. That's just the way that it is. So it gives physicians the opportunity in the end to, say, okay, we only charge $4 a graft, but you're going to have 3,000 grafts, and that's 12 grand. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for most people. So I think actually that's interesting that you just said that. I think that the good guys, the guys that are doing things by hand, great. If they can lower their prices to compete, that's going to be great. But there's really only a handful of guys that have taken the time to learn how to do FUE correctly. And there's even fewer guys that have a good enough team, in my view, to allow the team to do it. And there are some guys, there's definitely some great teams out there, but maybe there's 6, that I can think of. And that may be stretching it. And then the other guys are the individual guys like Dr. Dower, who is doing every extraction himself, which is rare.
I'd say that's extremely rare.
It doesn't happen.
But those are the guys that are going to continue to prosper, even with the onslaught of artists. Artists will be going to, we talked about this before, artists is going to level the playing field for a lot of doctors. And it'll be harder to distinguish between the doctors, especially when the artist starts making the recipient sites as well. Right? So I think that, they'll have to charge their 10, whatever they're charging to pay for the machine. But then you'll have the guys that are doing it themselves by hand that will be in a position where they can lower the price and still compete and still make a good living and separate themselves from the pack by saying we do this by hand.
But you know what I think is going to happen is the guys that are doing it by hand may actually raise their price. And, there are going to be some guys out there that are going to get enough online cred that are going to be able to market themselves to the point by saying, listen, I'm doing this myself. I've been, doing FUE for 10 years and, I'm a master at this. There will be guys who are willing to pay it. So you kind of have to think.
There will be.
You kind of have to think as a business person how these guys are thinking about making sure that they're taking care of their kids' private school tuition and this and that. They don't want to give away cut rate hair transplants, especially the guys that have the guys that have put in the time. In my view, are going to be the guys that are most resistant to lowering their prices. And I'm not saying that's necessarily correct, but I think that's the way things are going to play out. I do think what the artist is going to do is going to make the entire industry in general a much safer place, because as more guys from cosmetics and plastics get into hair, this is going to give them the opportunity to at least offer a safe procedure. It may be mediocre in their hands because they don't really have the skill set to do everything that's needed to be done to create a great hair transplant. But at the very least, they're going to be able to extract grafts safely without transecting them and implant them or at least create the recipient site, design the recipient site with the machine, and it's going to be a lot simpler and have a lot of a much better aesthetic outcome than if they would have just kind of started and learned on paying customers or paying patients. That's what's going to change. There's going to be a lot less damage in the long run, but there's going to be plenty of people with mediocre hair transplants until until these doctors start to meet that learning curve. I think at some point the robot will be good enough to kind of eliminate that factor as well, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. That can take 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years.
I foresee even the ability for it to, based on facial parameters, to design hairlines.
Well, that's what it's doing. There is a new software, and it's going to be launched, I think, in January in a few practices. And I know that Bob Bernstein is working on it right now, and that's exactly what it does. It kind of creates a 3D image of the patient based on several different images that are taken and then put into the software, put into the computer, and it's able to design what the computer feels is the perfect, or senses as the perfect hairline for the facial structure. And then, of course, with the help of the patient and the physician, they can tweak that. So I think it's going to be pretty. I think the industry itself is really going to evolve quickly, and I think there's going to be a lot of positive changes. But with that, there's still going to be a lot of shit work being done. There's going to be guys that, they're going to hire the wrong team, or they're not going to be able to place the grafts themselves well, and there's going to be mishandling of the graft. So, I mean, you're still going to have to really watch these clinics to make sure that you're going to the right clinic, even if they have this machine.
That part you just told me, it makes me wonder if there's on the back of each robot it says Skynet, because that's just kind of scary.
It's happening, man. It's happening.
No,
it's
happening. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
So let's what? Why don't we take a phone call? And I haven't taken a break yet, but let's take a phone call. Let me make sure that you are completely potted up and not cut off. Let me see who this is. Hey, you're on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Brian. I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Hey, Brian, what's happening, man? What can I do for you?
How's it going? Is Joe on the line as well?
He is.
Is this the Brian I think it is?
This is the Brian you think it is, yeah. This extremely satisfied SMP patient.
How's it going, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Really good. First of all, I just want to talk about, I don't know how prevalent SMP is in this industry, but I personally cannot overstate how happy I am with what SMP has done for me personally.
All right, well, a lot of guys who are listening don't even know what SMP is. So
okay,
go ahead.
You want me to talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead, talk about it.
Okay, SMP is Scalp Micro-pigemntation is what it stands for, and it's basically where a doctor takes, basically tattoos the top of your scalp just with very, very tiny dots to mimic what natural hair looks like.
Now, let me ask you. Let me ask you before you go on. Are you affiliated with any clinics at this point?
None at all. No.
Okay, good.
Just an extremely satisfied Hassan and Wong patient, but not affiliated with them.
Okay. Now, you had the temporary or the quasi-temporary SMP?
I had the temporary, and I'm actually really glad I had the temporary because I was at a car dealership and I saw a guy who had the permanent ones done.
Yeah.
It looked like somebody spilled a pen over his head.
Oh my God!
It was it was really bad. It was really.
I want to before I let you go on. I need to make it clear that at this stage, even though SMP is allowed to be discussed on Bald Truth Talk forums, American Hair Loss Association and I personally do not currently endorse any type of SMP. I do believe that for certain circumstances, and the fact that there is now this temporary version of SMP, I think that if you're willing to to take the risk and potentially see what it looks like, at least if you know that it could fade in time, that's probably your best bet. And I'm certainly interested in hearing about your experience. But just like you said, I've seen too many guys who have had the permanent SMP. And they've gone in to get retouched, and then all of a sudden, it kind of bleeds around the original dots, and it just looks like a mess.
Absolutely. In that one guy I saw at the dealership, I completely agree with you. It was permanent SMP. It looked terrible. The color was terrible. The dots were huge, just completely unnatural.
Yeah, I think it's one of the worst ideas. But go ahead. I want to hear your story.
Very good. but that was until, I learned that they were doing the temporary ones. I can't see it. I can't see it just pushing my forehead up against the mirror and holding my iPhone light shining down upon it. Like, it just looks very, very natural. But the main thing it did for me is just emotionally. Like, I've had hair transplants with Hassan and Wong before, and I can't speak higher than Dr. Hassan's work. It's amazing. But there's one thing Dr. Hassan couldn't do, and that was give me a full head of hair, simply because it's impossible.
Right. You didn't have enough supply. Yeah. Not
enough supply. But with S&P, obviously they don't want to make your head look like a big blob of ink, but they can really put many, many more number of dots than they can grafts. And so that, I have my head basically shaved right now, but it still looks like a full head of hair. Like, there's no part of my head that looks like it has more hair than the other.
Now, how many times have you had it done?
Okay, so I had it done twice last year, basically a month apart from each other. And then it faded over like a 14-month period. Not completely, but I kind of wanted to go get it touched up. So I had it touched up again earlier this year.
And so, okay. So I'm glad that you said that. So what are the touch-ups like? Were they able to really touch it up without it looking like the lines were blurred?
It looked great. No,
yeah.
The touch-up looked fantastic. I kind of expressed concern about that. Like, I maybe Joe can chime in here. I don't know if they kind of tattooed on top of places where there were already ink to make them darker, or if they went in between. Do you happen to know, Joe?
Well, first off, let me just let you know that Brian, he was part of the original test group when H&W were looking into the temporary S&P.
Okay.
And he came up, and he'd been a patient a few times over. He was a repair patient from LA, and he's an educated, very well informed patient, and a great guy. And I wanted him to have the opportunity to be a part of this if he felt it was worthy. So he had a test session, and he loved it. And then he had his two. I think he actually had. The ones that faded, were those from the test sessions, Brian?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
From the test session, though, I came up twice in the same year, about a month apart.
Yeah. So he was getting a filler. He wasn't getting the shaved effect on like someone with a slate bald Norwood 6 would get.
Right.
He was getting filler in between his existing hair, which at this point was mainly transplanted. So as he was getting older, he wanted to be able to have different hairstyles and go shorter, and his previous work wasn't allowing him to do that for a number of reasons. But he wanted to get as much fullness as possible, and because he was basically tapped out surgically, and going with FUE would have thinned his donor probably a bit too much for it to be aesthetically acceptable. S&P was, or temporary S&P was a potential answer for him. And so he had the test sessions, and he loved it. Came back 14 or so months later, earlier this year, and when the technician was redoing the procedure, she wasn't going straight on top of the existing work. She was going as much as in between the previous work as possible, so she could avoid doing exactly what you're talking about, the bleed over. And the fading had already gotten to the point where if there was any bleed over, there would be no visual cues that it actually happened.
Interesting. So what happens if a guy he doesn't want to wait till it's very faded, and he just wants to kind of maintain his look as is for as long as possible? And yes, it's going to start to fade, but as soon as it starts to fade, maybe he just wants to darken it. That's got to be difficult. I understand what you're saying, Joe, and that makes sense. That the previous procedure had faded to a degree where adding the new dots, you're not going to see any visual cues. But if it's still dark enough, how do you do it?
Yeah, well, you got two different kinds of patients. You got the shaved effect patients, and you've got the filler patients like Brian. And on the shaved effect patients, you don't want to go too dense for that exact reason, okay? Because the S&P is the only semblance of hair that they have on their scalp when they're shaved head patients.
Right.
And so there's a point where the technician, and this is purely a judgment call, has to say no. This is enough. And I've had S&P patients come back to me saying, "Can we go denser? Can we go denser?" And I have to tell them, no, it's not a good idea. Well, why? Because the exact reason you're talking about. If you get it too dense, and then as it fades, there's a potential for bleed out when you're trying to go into to darken it back up again. So if you have the density at a nice balance where there's enough spaces in between to where you can fill those in the next year, basically is what it comes down to, then you can greatly reduce the chances of that happening.
And that is precisely why I think, and I don't mean to cut you off, that's precisely why I think this permanent SMP, in my view, is one of the biggest mistakes that people can make. Yet, it is huge. There are companies out there, I'm not going to name names, that are just huge. And I have to say this. There was a company, a very well-known, one of the most famous companies out there that came to me. They wanted to talk about advertising on the forum, and I explained to them. I told them how much it would cost them, and I told them that the only way that I would allow them to promote themselves on this forum, to talk, to really, pay me, is if they switched over to temporary SMP, and if they offered temporary SMP, and that's the only thing that we would promote, period. And initially they were like, well, yeah, we would certainly consider that because we want to be affiliated with you. And they never did that. And I have to tell you that I'm really glad that I made that decision, because just the fact that they wouldn't move in that direction kind of shows me that, it was more about maintaining their business model than it was about, giving people options that could really benefit them in the long run, in my view, And from what I've seen, the permanent stuff is just really, really bad. And I turned down that money, which would be significant. Most people, that they make a good living taking what they offered. But I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. So I think this is a good story.
Well, it's funny, from a business standpoint, don't you think it would be more in their favor to switch to the temporary S&P, because now for the patient to maintain the look, they got to come visit you every year as opposed to
and that's exactly what I said to them, and I don't understand why they wouldn't make that decision. And I think, I think, to be honest with you, I think that they kind of know that even the permanent SMP is quasi temporary, because it will fade no matter what they say. So people do have to come in and get retouched anyway. So, maybe they like the idea. And again, I'm just kind of, freeballing here. Maybe they just like the idea that patients won't have to come in as often. And maybe they believe that the patient will feel, or the customer, I should say, will feel more confident in that respect, that maybe it'll last 2 years or 3 years before they need a retouching. And once they do, they've already had them, they'll get them at least twice, and then they're just going to work on volume and not really care about repeat business.
I'm wondering if the temporary was even something they considered when they were starting their business model to begin with, because from a business point of view, it makes more sense for the temporary.
Right.
And I'm going to take credit for the temporary movement in North America, because no one was offering it that we know of until I came back from Italy. And on your show, I excitedly was talking about this.
Oh, you do know that it's like the day after you're on my show, all of a sudden there was another Canadian doctor who was, flying to Italy, and then you had a guy from Minnesota who was flying to Italy, and all of a sudden it just took off.
And I'm pretty happy with that. That I helped to institute change in that, because other companies are starting to offer this, and some of the permanent S&P companies have felt the heat, and they are now offering the temporary version. I don't know where they're getting it from, because there are only a few companies that make it. But for guys like Brian, it makes a lot of sense. He had no other options to get where he wanted to be, and he's not putting himself in a position to look like he had a pin spilled on his head like you saw in that other guy.
Dude, I'm telling anyone who's out there getting permanent SMP, anyone who sees these videos, I am telling you, just based on what I've seen in person, and I'm talking about recent stuff, and just like what Brian said, in my view, I think it's a mistake. I could be wrong. There might be some really great permanent SMP being done on a regular basis, but would I recommend it to a friend or a family member? No effing way. I just wouldn't do it.
No.
And that's why I told this
Yeah.
company, look, this is what it will cost you, to be a part of what we do. But you have to. The only way that I can take this cash is if you offer temporary SMP and give people that choice. But I have to tell you the truth. I'm kind of glad that they didn't even move in that direction. Not for consumers, but just the fact that I don't want to be involved in even the temporary SMP thing. Even though I think that it is a good option for like guys like you, Brian. I think that there are too many guys, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, Joe. But I think there are too many guys who really see that as a complete alternative to to doing anything else about their hair. They figure they're bald, they're just going to tattoo their head. And I have seen, even in the best temporary SMP, when there's absolutely no hair, you're still missing that three-dimensional appearance. It could look really good, but you still don't have that full three-dimensional appearance.
It's true, and when I would consult with people about it, I would explain that. And the one thing I found is that, and I never looked at this detail before, but a lot of guys that look like they're slate bald, they're actually not. They'll have a fine peach fuzz, and
right.
it actually accentuates and helps with that 3D effect. Now, I'm not saying that it's a perfect solution, but you know how I am. I mean, I want to explain not just the good, but also the bad. Is that yes, it's going to have this. If you are split bald, it's not going to have as much of a 3D effect as if you had more peach fuzz. And another shortcoming is if your scalp is shiny now with no hair, it's still going to be kind of shiny with the SMP.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that a trained eye would understand and be able to pick things like that out. But to the average guy on the street or average person on the street, seeing an SMP patient that's had an artistic design done, where it doesn't look like a helmet's on their head,
right,
and it's done well with high quality, then they wouldn't stand out in the least.
Yeah, and listen, I do. I know I'm not just saying this because, and I'm not trying to just be polite, because I know that like you said, you introduced it to North America, and I think it's a pretty big deal. I do think, and obviously Brian had a good experience. I do think there's a place for it, and I honestly think the only way to go is, if you're going to have this done, is to give yourself an out. Have the option.
And that's what I like about it, is it is an out. If you don't like it, it's gone. I have none left. Last year for the ISHRS conference in San Francisco, I had half of my crown done, or half my head done, and went down to show the doctors what this can do.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I mean, it looked fantastic. And then when I came back from the conference, I had the other half done so I could stop looking like a freak. But it worked really well. And, that's been over a year now, and it's probably 95% gone. I can't even tell it's there.
Well, we discussed even me having it done. And, the only reason I honestly don't have it done is because I don't mind painting my head. It takes me 5 minutes to put a little derm match in the back of my head. So for me to have to keep going back and getting my scalp tattooed, it's just, at this stage in my life, it's just not worth it to me. It's not even about the money. I can get it done for free anywhere. It's just.
But I also told you, I think in our discussions, that you painting your head is more effective than what SMP will be. It would actually look thinner with just SMP. And I think Brian can attest to that, because he.
Let me touch on that, because that's a really big area for me. As far as like the coloring of my head, I was a religious Topic user for years. I'm a firm believer, and even Joe told me this before I started using Topic. You develop a psychological addiction to it over a period of time. It's now an absolutely necessary part of you. It's like I could not go out of the house with it. I'm a crazy about traveling, and it's like I needed it. I had to make sure I had it when I traveled, et cetera, et cetera. And having to just look at that bald spot, every day and seeing it, it's always a frustrating thing for me.
Yeah.
Topic is it's a temporary patch that just goes away at the end of the day.
Right.
Another thing, I love swimming.
It's like booze.
Swimming.
It's the same thing. It's like drinking.
But the main difference between SMP and Topic, SMP is a part of me. It's with me wherever I go, whatever plane I hop on to whatever country, it's with me. When I go swimming, it's with me. I don't have to worry about it coming off or anything. And psychologically, that is absolutely huge. I mean, I
And
cannot
look,
overstate how amazing it is.
listen, I could certainly agree with that. I'm kind of in a different position because I will actually say in public with people, if I go in my pool that, I'm like, there's possible you're going to see like a black oil slick in the pool. And I just make fun of myself. And I'm so public about it that if it does happen, I'm not ashamed of someone seeing, or I shouldn't say ashamed. I'm just not obsessed about someone seeing that my crown is thin if for some reason the makeup comes off. So I'm kind of relieved of that. But I certainly understand, before I was really open about it, I can, I just remember the first time when I was in a dentist's office and I laid back and I get back up after this procedure and there's like a black smiley face in the bolster,
Yeah, and that to me, I've been in that situation too before. I personally just found it really humiliating, but maybe not necessarily in the dentist's office, but like when you're staying over at a girl's house and she wakes up and like, what the hell is that black stuff that's all over?
I would bring a black pillowcase with me, carry in my pocket. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and you know what? That's funny you say that. For that reason, like I only have slept on black pillowcases for the last 8 or so years. Now it doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, I get it, and I'm just I'm making light of it because of my situation, but I understand that there's nothing like being free. There's nothing like being unfettered from what you've been dealing with for so long. And if this is an option that really helps you, then shit, man, I see nothing wrong with it. I'm all for it. I'm just glad that it's not permanent so that you could always back out.
Yeah, no, and exactly what you said. It has bought me more freedom than anything. And, I promised myself there was so much I was holding myself back from, because hair loss. I told myself as soon as I got over it, there's going to be a number of things that I'm going to do. And, I did that this year. I took a 6-week trip around the world.
Wow.
I hit every waterfall and every ocean that I would never swim in before because I was too self-conscious. I did all of it. And I owe that to SMP.
Well, that's a really profound statement you just made because, I was talking about being on this national radio show, and it's a big show. And, one of the guy's first questions was, why are guys, and this is a guy who has no hair loss, and he's an older guy, why is it such an emotional issue for men? It's not like it's life-threatening. And, when I hear you say that you kind of put a hold on your life, that you didn't do things that you really wanted to do because you were too self-conscious and because of your hair loss, I mean, that really illustrates everything that guys feel about hair loss in a nutshell. That really is it's very powerful. And I'm glad that you're able to get past it because, listen, I was the same way. There are some stories and there's one story that, the associate producer of the Tom Leykis show is a guy that I used to work with. He actually used to produce my show when I was in Westwood One. And, when I first got to California, we used to hang out and, we were actually on Hollywood Boulevard and we were going to a pizza place. And all of a sudden, like this major gust of wind came around the corner. And I just basically turned in the other direction and made believe I was looking at some building. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? And I had to explain, it's going to destroy my hair, man. So I had to walk backwards, so that it didn't mess up my hair. So I get it.
I am with you.
So I still deal with issues of the wind and all that stuff. And, you may even be more free than I am. I'm free to talk about it. But if I'm actually out and doing things, once my hair is kind of stuck in place and set, I hate the idea of it being messed up because it's difficult to kind of I'm not carrying all my supplies.
Yep. Every emotion you're talking about right now, I felt. I started losing my hair when I was 17 years old. Just absolutely devastating beyond belief.
Yeah.
All of those issues with SMP, gone.
Yeah.
Gone. And to me, I never expected to feel this kind of level of satisfaction until cloning or whatever the next greatest thing to come is. But SMP did it for me.
Well, dude, listen, Brian.
I got to tell you, too, you have Joe from Staten Island on the show every now and then. It was only when I would hear Joe from Staten Island speak where I'd be like, okay, here is one guy who feels the same way about hair loss that I do, who just absolutely despises and mourns it and hates it for every minute of his life. That's how bad I was. I just could not come to terms with it.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. Go ahead. I'm glad you brought that up, but and I'm glad that obviously you're in the position you are right now. But I was talking to Joe Tillman about that about Joe from Staten Island a little bit today, and kind of explaining that situation. That one of the main reasons Joe from Staten Island is a part of this broadcast, and for some reason he didn't call in tonight, but that's okay. I hope he's all right. Is precisely what you just explained. That there is a little bit of Joe in everybody, and some guys are worse off. Some guys, well, not too many guys are worse off, and some guys are better off. But kind of having that example of how hair loss affects our lives, and in that capacity, and the capacity it affected Joe's life, I think is really important for people to listen to. And there's so many guys over the years be like, why, especially guys in the industry. I'm not talking about you, Tillman, but other guys in the industry are like, why do you have Joe on all the time? Jesus Christ, he's so depressing. Precisely why he said that. But, what you just explained, that you were able to relate, and you didn't feel like you were alone. And that's the truth, man. There's so many guys out there who stop living because of their hair loss.
And I can verify that, when I first met Brian, it's been, how long has it been, Brian? Probably 7 years, 8 years?
Yeah, actually, today's my 32nd birthday. I came in when I was 23. My first surgery with you guys.
Wow.
I've known this kid for...
Today's your birthday?
Yeah.
Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Well, listen,
I've known him for quite a while.
I'm going to take a quick break, though. I'll let you finish your thought. I want to take a quick break before we finish up the show. I want to answer one question, and the guy's asking if I'm able to look at myself in the mirror before I paint my head. Yeah, listen, I'm used to it, dude. I've been doing this for so long. And, frankly, when I wake up in the morning, it's basically painted, so I could walk around like that. And then I shower, comb my hair back, blow dry my hair, and just paint it real quick. It's not a big deal. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, it's just nice to hear the change in Brian's voice. I mean, I've known him for many years, and even with the surgery, I could, all the surgery that he's had, I could tell he still wasn't happy. I could tell that there was still something that was holding him back, and I remember thinking on multiple occasions that I wish there was more that could be done for him, because he's one of those, he's one of those guys that you meet in the industry that you just enjoy talking to. Is just one of the people that you like, and to know when Brian called me, I think it was a year ago, so telling me how this has changed his life, and he's starting to travel the world. It's just a good feeling, and I'm really happy for him.
Well, you should be happy and you should be proud of what you've accomplished, Joe. And Brian, I'm glad that you called in tonight. And I don't know if you've called the show before, but you should call in more often. You have, because I think you have an important story. You were a guy who started to lose his hair at 17. You've been through the mill, and you've kind of come out the other side, and you're okay. That's an important story to tell.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it's one thing that I didn't think would happen in a million years. Throw me back into my early 20s when I was when I met Joe for the first time at Hassan Wong. I was emotionally destroyed by what hair loss had done for me. Even after several surgeries, again, I can speak the highest things about Dr. Hassan's work, but it's ultimately limiting what he's able to do. It was the SMP. It's like I am completely on the other end of the spectrum right now. And, I've been going out with girls that I did not have the confidence to ask. I would have never had the confidence to ask out a girl this pretty. And I do great. I'm no problems in the lady department. Actually, it was a really big day for me. Let me tell you the highlight of what this year was.
Yeah.
I went out with a very, very attractive girl. While we were sitting at dinner, she told me, she's like, you know what I like about you? She's like, you have a lot of confidence, but not the confidence level of a complete a-hole. So it's like, giving me the impression I'm a really good guy.
Right.
And it just, what was awesome is like, it was so good to hear, but like I already knew it and I believed it for myself because I had overcome like my hair loss issues. Now, however, the biggest highlight was right after that. I got in my car and I drove home. Now, the highlight about driving in my car and going home, one thing I stopped myself from doing when I was 21 years old, I had always wanted a convertible. You know why I didn't get a convertible?
Yeah.
Because of my damn hair loss.
Sure, I get it.
I promised myself as soon as I got over it, I'm getting a convertible because I'm just adventurous. I love the outdoors. So you know what? I got home and I drove in my convertible.
Wow.
Back home.
That is awesome.
And so I'm so happy with what this has done for me. It's complete freedom, and to be over this, horrific, horrible disease of hair loss is the most freeing thing I've ever experienced.
I think I'm going to run out and get a tattoo now because I won't. I had a convertible for a while, but I would only ride in it with the top down, with all the windows up, because that kind of like stopped the crazy wind. I never would ride in it with all the windows down, so I never fully enjoyed the entire convertible experience because I'd get out of the car, I'd look like the guy from A Flock of Seagulls,
Yep.
It just,
It's a really good experience.
well, listen, man, I'm really happy for you. And you know what? I would love you to call the show more often. I mean, you have a really good story to tell. And I think hearing these positive stories, especially for someone who's been through what you've been through, losing hair at 17, having multiple surgeries, finally finding an outlet, not an outlet, but a way, the light at the end of the tunnel and living your life, that's a success story. And I think it's important that you called. And when you have time, call again. All right.
I will call in next week. I want to chat about Avodart and side effects, if that's okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate the call, Brian. Good luck to you.
Right,
Happy
thank
birthday.
You guys. Take care, Brian. Joe. Thank you, Spencer.
Bye bye. Take care. I probably won't take a break because we only got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow, Brian's a good guy. He's got a great story, and I'm glad he called in. It's been a while since I've talked to him.
That's an amazing story, man. Holy cow! I mean, even down to the fucking convertible.
Yeah. Let me tell you, when he called me, it was sometime last year. He told me what he was doing and what the S&P had done for him. I just sat down and I was just, it's one of those feelings where when it's like, wow, this is a fantastic turnaround. I mean, because let me tell you, you hear the confidence in his voice.
So what is he? So he's what, 33 today?
33, 32,
yeah.
33, yeah.
He's still young, man. He has his whole life ahead of him.
Yeah, he's still got his whole life ahead of him. He was 23 when we met, and God, 10 years ago. And I mean, he was broken.
I get it.
For repair, great improvements, but you could tell just there was something, right? I mean, he just.
You're breaking up, dude. You there?
And now to hear him on the phone, on the radio, it's wow. I mean, he has just done a complete 180, like he said, and it's just really nice to hear.
Yeah, and that's not all that common, especially someone who had such advanced hair loss at a young age. So I think, Hassan and Wong needs to take a lot of credit for that, obviously for the surgeries and the fact that you guys started to offer, at least, when you're working there, you were doing those SMP trials and, kind of made it possible for him to have the temporary SMP. A lot of guys out there really staunchly against SMP. And I have to say, I'm going to repeat myself, I am not a fan of permanent SMP, period. But if there's a temporary option like this and people understand its limitations, then why not?
Exactly.
It freed this guy. I mean, it took him out of his shackles, man. This guy was in his own living hell. And now he's talking about dating girls, hot girls, and driving in convertibles. I mean, that's basically, it's a hair club commercial without the wig.
It really is.
That's
exactly what it is. And throw in the travel to the exotic beaches in South Pacific, and that's what he was doing. He was traveling to Southeast Asia and island hopping.
Wow.
And he never would have done that before.
Yeah.
Good for Brian.
I get it, man. I get it. I actually, I developed my life and my business and my career, everything that I do, obviously around my hair loss, but also because I needed to work for myself. I was especially in my early 20s, I was really becoming crippled, especially at the beginning, and just feeling really uncomfortable having to go out and deal with my hair every day, and living in New York City and having to walk everywhere with the crazy wind and the cold, and I got to the point where I was getting very, very depressed. And it did certainly, listen, I don't regret that happened to me. And I'm glad that, frankly, that it did, because I'm doing what I'm doing today. And it was a tremendous learning experience for me, and it helped me to really evolve as a person. But it was tough, man. When I was 23 years old, I was in a bad spot emotionally. I was very depressed, very depressed, man. I decided to figure out a way, like I said, to kind of like make my life and develop my life around my hair loss. And, some of that I did become a quasi recluse, meaning that I was able to work from my home. So I didn't go out a lot during the day, and I would just go to like the bars at night. And that's how I would go out and get laid and do my thing and still have fun and socialize. But I kind of felt like almost like a vampire. I can't even explain why. I think part of it was, I didn't want to go into the workforce and deal with deal with the hair situation, put on a suit and deal with the tons of hairspray. And especially when you're that age, it was tough. So I certainly understand what he's going through. I know people looking at me today saying, what are you talking about, dude? But when you're 23 and you're starting to have to comb the back of the hair over the back and spray it, it's just, you don't realize how lucky you are and how much hair you have, especially at the beginning of your hair loss, because all you're seeing is the hair that you're losing as opposed to the hair that you have. And now I'm able to look at things, in the other way.
It's funny. I was seeing the hair that I had and not the hair that I lost.
Right.
I didn't realize just how bald I was until it was pointed out to me in a picture. I mean, comments were made, but it's just I thought people were just kind of ribbing me. But it was the moment when I saw how much of that GLH hair in a can from Ron Popeil I had to use.
Right.
And I told you the story where it was a mismatched color, and it was too light for my actual hair color, so I looked like a skunk.
That's awesome.
That was a defining moment. Oh my God, I'm really bald. This is ridiculous.
There's actually so many great stories. I actually think we should do a few shows just with people should call in with their crazy hair loss stories. Forget about just the emotional aspects, but just the funny stuff that we've had to deal with. The walking in the wind issue that I had. And, I know that Mike from Hassan Wong has a lot of funny stories. I definitely
He's a treasure trove of stories for sure.
Yeah, and now we can laugh about them, but it's devastating at the time. But what we do as guys with hair loss to kind of like live our lives and conceal our hair loss. It's people who don't have hair loss can never understand it. I think I would love to put up some segments and have people call in and tell their crazy stories.
That would be several episodes for sure.
Oh yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So listen, man, I'm going to, I appreciate you calling in as usual. It was a fun show. I wonder where Joe is. So I got to put out the smoke signals for him to see if he's all right.
Yeah, I hope he's okay.
Yeah. Oh, you never know.
Unusual.
He's probably going to be mad because my staff, as he puts it, didn't contact him to let him know that we were live tonight. But, he should be, all he has to do is check the website.
It's an easy thing to do.
I shouldn't have to wake him up out of his sleep or have someone call him or have Andrew contact him. Anyway.
Well, you have your people contact his people to wake him up, and you know how it is.
Yeah. We'll contact his kid. But anyway, guys, Joe Tillman, hairtransplantmentor.com. There's a great article that he put up online. What's the name of the article?
FUE, Why So Pricey?
Why, yeah. And actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. People should go and read it. That's hairtransplantmentor.com, right?
Yeah.
All right. And that's it. Joe Tillman, thanks a lot. Hope to have you on the show again soon. Feel free, obviously, to call in anytime. Guys, I'm going to give out the websites. It's thebaldtruth.com, of course, for archive shows of The Bald Truth. It's funny, I didn't even put on my 360 machine today. That's how out of it I am. If you want to check out, basic information about hair loss, what to, do's and don'ts, what to do, what not to do, learn more about surgical hair restoration, so on and so forth, you can check out the American Hair Loss Association website, which is americanhairloss.org. If you want to interact with other hair loss sufferers, a good place to go, of course, is our message forum, which is baldtruthtalk.com. I do tell everybody, though, to really take what you read on any message forum, including ours, with a grain of salt, because a lot of that information, frankly, is coming from anonymous users. We have a quasi-private forum, so we try to keep it, try to keep the information to something that's going to be helpful for people. Can't speak tonight. But you still never know. So do your own due diligence. If you're considering surgical hair restoration, obviously check out the International Alliance of Hair Restoration Surgeons, which is IAHRS.org. Do not trust anonymous posters on a message forum, especially when you're considering surgery. You got to do your own research, man. You got to meet with patients, speak to doctors, have consultations. You got to do the legwork, period. Until next time, I want you guys to be strong. God bless, and thank you so much for listening. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for any inconvenience you may have been put to prior to the program, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if you could now leave by the exits at the rear, that'd be splendid. Thank you. Good night.